All right. So here's your slideshow for DNA and genetic mutations. This is a pretty good one. I'm not going to have us watch the video in this video, but you can watch this. Remember, a lot of this is stuff we do need, but there's a few vocabulary words that are just, they're high school level. So don't get bogged down by a lot of the vocabulary. Just try to pull away some of the main ideas when you watch this video on your own. So to recap, every living thing is made of at least one cell, right? And lots of things are made of multiple cells. This is a eukaryotic cell, so it has a nucleus, and that's where the DNA is going to be stored. And if it was a prokaryotic cell, like a bacteria, it would be filled with just randomly scattered DNA floating around the cell outside of a nucleus. But either way, every cell is going to have some genetic instructions to tell that cell how to live its life. And those genetic instructions are called DNA. As you can see right here, it's like in this twisted ladder formation. And this code is made of only 4 chemicals, which is surprising because it's very big and very important. But there's only 4 chemicals, 4 molecules that make this code. We have adenine, thymine, guanine, and cytosine. I don't need you to remember the names of these chemicals yet, but I do want you to remember their abbreviations, A, T, G, and C. It's these chemicals that bond together and form this ladder structure, and the specific order of the chemicals determines what proteins are made, which determines what the organism looks like. So your code here is pretty long. It's called the human genome, and it's over 3 billion letters long. That's a pretty massive code, made of only 4 chemicals, just repeating in very specific, very purposeful organization. So when we have big sections of this that code for a specific trait, we call it a gene. So let's say here's person 1, and they have, of course, 3 billion letters going along here, but here's a section of it, and you get to this part right here. This particular part, we're going to say, is the code or the gene for how curly your hair is. So notice person 1, person 2, and person 3 all have this hair curliness gene located in the same spot, but they don't all have the same letters. So when you come to this hair curliness spot, you'll see person 1 has ATAT, person 2 has CCAT, and person 3 has ATAA. So they have different letters, or they have different code in this spot for hair curliness. Let's see how that affects them. Well, the person with ATAT has super curly hair. This girl has CCAT, and that makes her hair just kind of wavy. And ATAA is making this girl's hair totally straight. So the different code led to different traits that the organism had. Every time a new cell is created in your body, which is going to happen trillions and trillions of times during your life, the entire set of DNA must be copied, all 3 billion letters, because every cell has the full copy of your DNA. They don't use the entire copy, but they have the entire instruction manual inside each nucleus. So if you're a muscle cell, inside your nuclei, inside your nucleus, you have the entire copy of all the human DNA. But you only read from the chapter on how to be a muscle cell. If you're a skin cell, you just flip to the chapter on how to be a skin cell. So you're using the parts that are important to you and skipping the parts that are irrelevant. All right, the code. So let's pretend that you are an asexually reproducing alien slug thing, okay? And this is your grandma. And grandma had this particular code, AAGATA, and this code determined her slime color, her skin color, if you will, and that was blue. So this is grandma's code, AAGATA. And of course, since she's reproducing asexually, that means she's going to make a clone of herself. So she has to copy this code down perfectly, and she does. She passes this on to your mom, AAGATA, just like grandma had. So of course, same letters means same trait. But then mom is passing on her code to you through asexual reproduction, we'll say budding or something. But this time there's just a tiny little mistake. Instead of AAGATA, you swapped that first A for a C. And when you change the letter, you can change the trait. This is called a mutation. Now you are a mutant. And I don't know if Grandma approves. So you, like it or not, without any fault of your own, you have received a mutated gene from your mom. She tried to pass on her exactly identical clone DNA, but mistakes happen, mutations happen. And in this case, you are now green. Now this could be good, it could be bad, or it could have no effect, it could be neutral. What if the environment here that these slugs live in is blue? And that's why the rest of these things are blues, because they're blending in and hiding from their predator. And then you're born and you're green. That's not so great for you, right? You're probably going to get eaten like in the first couple days of life because you stand out. It's not your fault, but you had an unfortunate mutation, which caused you to survive less long in life. In that case, this mutation would be called a harmful mutation. But you could also consider this a beneficial mutation, because what if the environment was actually more green and these things are just getting eaten up like crazy by the predator? That in order to survive, they just have to reproduce a ton because they stick out like a sore thumb to their predator. But then you just got lucky and you inherited a random mutation which made you turn green, and now you actually kind of blend in. You actually kind of blend in better than any other organism in your species. That means you're probably going to survive longer than any other organism, which means you'll have more opportunities to reproduce. So you're going to pass on this DNA super successfully. And you might be pretty lonely right now because you're the only green one, but after you've reproduced 100 times, you will not be alone. You'll have all your offspring clones with you, right? And if this trait is beneficial, you're probably going to see it spreading from generation to generation to generation. There'll be more who have this trait, not because they got to choose it, but because you're being so successful because you're camouflaged, that you're going to have more kids, and your kids will have more kids, and your grandkids will have more kids than other little slimy aliens around them. And you're going to see this trait more and more common as the years go by. That's how random mutations can become beneficial adaptations. So we just covered a lot of this, but every mutation is random. You don't get to choose what changes happen to you. They just happen. They can happen when you're conceived. So in sexual reproduction, that's when male DNA and female DNA combines. You can have mutations happening there, but it can also happen at any time during your life. And it does happen throughout your life. These changes can be beneficial, harmful, or neutral, and a lot of them are pretty neutral. Mutations are the only way that asexually reproducing organisms actually do get a small amount of genetic variation. So remember how a few weeks ago I told you that asexual reproduction produces only identical clones? Well, that was almost true, but it was a little bit untrue. They do attempt to produce perfect identical clones, but then you get these random mutations that creep in, and it adds just a little bit of spice, just a little bit of genetic variation. Not nearly as much as sexual reproduction, but just a little bit. That's why when you have a bottle of hand sanitizer, it says that it can kill 99.9% of bacteria, but it can't say 100, because there's always a chance that sitting on your hand is a 1 in a million bacteria that has a random mutation that actually makes it survive the hand sanitizer. So they can't claim to kill 100% because mutations happen. Mutations make things different. And when you have differences within your population, some of you are strong or weak against hand sanitizer, if you're a bacteria anyway. Mutations happen when cells make mistakes when they replicate. So like I said, your body has to create trillions of cells during your lifetime. And every cell created needs to have a copy of the DNA. And each one of those trillion cells has a 3 billion letter long code that it's got to copy down. It's going to make a couple mistakes here and there, right? Your body is super accurate though. Like seriously, 99.99999999999% of the time, it's doing it perfectly. But you do accumulate some accidental mistakes as you grow up. Mutations can also be caused by an external factor called a mutagen. Mutagens are the things that you want to stay away from. They're going to cause your DNA to get scrambled a little bit. It's going to change up those letters. Common mutagens are things like radiation, harmful chemicals, drugs, alcohol, anything of that nature that's just bad for you could be a mutagen, something that causes a mutation to happen. So like nuclear waste, drugs, alcohol, even viruses can cause changes in your DNA. The most common ones though, harmful chemicals found in drugs, alcohol, tobacco. That's why we don't do them. They're not good for you. So some mutations are actually beneficial. Remember that they're all random though. So you can't just pick and choose the good ones. You're just rolling the dice every time you get a mutation. Some mutations though actually increase your chance of survival. Think about that little green alien slime thing. It mutated to become green. Well, what if the environment is green and it can be camouflaged? Well, now that means it actually has an increased chance of survival because the predators can't see it. Some mutations increase the amount of offspring you can have. So think about yourself like if you were a peacock. If you're a male peacock, you rely on bright, flashy feathers in order to impress the females. Well, what if you get a mutation that makes your colors just a little bit brighter than everybody else's? That's not going to affect your survival too much, but it will definitely affect your reproductive success. So you will be a little bit flashier, the females will be a little bit more interested, you might have a few more kids than everybody else, and that would be a beneficial mutation. Or if your mutation just helps you help your kids to survive as adults and thrive as adults. This set of 3 should remind you a little bit of our adaptations. These are the purposes of adaptations, right? Well, all adaptations started out as random mutations that some lucky plant or animal or bacteria got once upon a time, passed on to their kids, and now it's spread to the point that pretty much all the organisms in the species have it, and we just call it an adaptation now. But some mutations can be harmful. A fair amount of them can be harmful. If they decrease your lifespan, if they make you die sooner, that's bad. If they make you have less kids, that's bad. And if they cause you to have kids with lower chances of success, then it's a harmful mutation. But most of the mutations that you get during your life will be neutral. Neutral mutations, they're common, and they have no real effect on your survival or your chances of reproduction or the lives of your kids. Pretty much just neutral. The reason for this is because, like for example, imagine you wake up one day when you're 25 and you have a new freckle on your pinky toe. Is that going to increase your chances of living to be 100? Probably not. Is it going to kill you off tomorrow? I sure hope not. Is it going to make you have more kids or less kids? Not really. So it's considered neutral. One more thing about neutral mutations. I said earlier that you have a genetic code of over 3 billion letters, right? But not all 3 billion letters are completely mandatory. You'd think they would be, but you actually have big chunks of your DNA that are just considered junk DNA. They don't code for anything. They're just there, and we don't fully understand why. So whenever you get a mutation, you're just randomly changing one part of your DNA. And if you change an important part, it might be harmful, or it might be beneficial, or it could be neutral still, like the freckle on the pinky toe. But there's also a chance that when you just randomly change a letter of your DNA, that it happens on a piece of junk DNA, and that junk DNA doesn't code for anything. So nothing actually gets changed, in your body. So it could be neutral just because of that. Let's look at some examples. Here we have some genetic code for this deer. Deer have to hide from their predators. They're pretty well camouflaged. Male deer have to spar with each other in order to compete for reproductive success so they can have kids. And this deer has a mutation. It started with letter T there, and then a mutation happened. Now it has a letter C. Let's see how this affects him. Drum roll, please. And great. Now he has one extra hair. How would you classify this mutation? Is it beneficial for him? Is it harmful for him? Or is it pretty much neutral and it's not going to affect his life too much? Hopefully you recognize that that is pretty neutral, right? One extra hair is not going to have any sort of drastic change on your life, for better or for worse. So we'll call it a neutral mutation. All right, here's the same buck, but this time he's born with a different mutation that causes him to look like this. Look how big those antlers are. Instead of having regular average-sized antlers, now he is the king of the forest. He's Bambi's dad. And this deer is going to have wild reproductive success because he's going to be able to spar off, to fight off all the rivals, right? All the other males of the forest. And so he's going to be able to reproduce pretty successfully because of the lucky random mutation that he had. So we're going to say that is a beneficial mutation. Now, of course, we're not counting the fact that hunters will now be after him with all they have. We're just talking about the way nature usually runs. Okay, last one. This letter T right here. It was supposed to be a T, but then when he was born, there was a mutation right at conception. It got changed to a G, and now instead of looking like this deer is born like this, albino. All right? If you live in a green forest and you are stark white, it's kind of hard to hide from predators, right? You are no longer camouflaged for your environment. I'm going to call this a harmful mutation because he will no longer be able to hide from the predators that would like to hunt him down, whether they be animals or human, right? Because I'm sure many humans would like to have an albino 4-point buck on their wall. I know I would. All right, some things to remember. Our genetic code is what gives us our traits. You are the way you are because of your genetic code. If you change the code, you change the traits. All mutations happen at random. So you don't get to choose which code you have or which changes you get. Changes can happen because of just regular old cell replication accidents, but some are caused by mutagens. The average human gets 20 to 50 mutations per year. That sounds pretty serious, but remember, most are just neutral. They either are so small they have no real effect on your life, or they just happen to junk DNA, and they literally have no effect on your life. So we don't have to live in fear of the random mutations we're going to get because they're going to happen whether we're stressed about it or not. What we can do, though, is put ourselves in harm's way less often. So let's stay away from the mutagens. No playing around near chemical waste. No doing drugs or alcohol that are going to mutate and harm you, change your DNA. And definitely stay out of nuclear waste. That's the lesson for today, okay? Mutations can be either beneficial, harmful, or neutral. Okay, I hope this helped. Hope you learned a little bit more and remember more about mutations, and have a great day.